Hi, I'm here. I just want to do this. Somebody asked about wires. So when you're building gum paste or wafer paper flowers, I have some examples over here. You're going to have to decide what kind of floral wire to use. And this is just basic, regular florist wire. You can get it either in white, brown, or green. Usually you can find it in white and brown, or white and green easier. The brown is good if you can get it, but sometimes you need that for like branches and stuff. Basically, when you get the wire, the gauge is a fraction. So if it's 18 gauge, that means 18 pieces of wire next to each other make up 1 inch. So you can take just a regular ruler, obviously, find 1 inch. So that's 18 of these. And I put this out because I wasn't sure what the gauge is on that. This is 20. So this is 18 1/18 of an inch wide. So that's the 18 gauge. The gauge is basically a fraction. So that's 1/18 of an inch, and this is 20 gauge, it's 1/20th of an inch. So the smaller the number, the larger, the thicker the wire is, and usually the stiffer it is. So for things that are stiffer and wider, you don't want to use those in a really delicate petal. I don't have any really delicate, I just pulled some things that I had made. But for the stiffer wires like this, I made these on the 20 gauge wire because it's pretty stiff, and I can like just take this and stick it into a styrofoam block to dry it. And then if you're going to put it in an arrangement, you can stick this into a, you don't want to stick the wire directly into a cake, but you can take this and put it into a coffee stirrer or just a regular drinking straw and put a whole bunch in there, and that'll hold it in place. So when you're deciding what to use, like what gauge wire to use, you have to take into account the weight of the petal, the size of the petal. Oh, and I will say, make sure that you're using cloth covered wire, all right? So you can get either plain wire or cloth covered. The cloth covered wire grips onto the gum paste a lot easier, and it just makes your job much easier. So I've got some, let's see, I have some 22 gauge, and this is 30. I use 30 gauge a lot, and that's when I'm wiring petals themselves. I'll use the 30 gauge or a 32 sometimes. The 32 is really weak, but it's thin. So depending on what you're wiring, if you're going to wire everything together in a bunch like this and tape it right at the base of the flower, you can use the weaker wires that are thinner. And let me see if you can see how thin that wire is right there. Let me try to get it. There you go. So you can see how thin that wire is, and that is probably a 30 because I use 30s a lot. If the individual petals are going to be wrapped so that they're all together, you can use a thinner wire, and that way you don't have to worry about the wire showing through the petal too. If it's a really, really thin petal, you want a really thin wire, and you usually want to use a white one because that way it won't show through the gum paste as much. For the thicker flowers, like for this peony, you can see that the wire is a lot stiffer. It's holding the petal up like that. This is a larger wire. It's probably the 20 because I like to use the 20 because they're white. The 18 that I have are green. So I wouldn't use a green wire inside this petal because it's going to show through. And that's really the only consideration for that. This is a wafer paper flower seed. It's built on a styrofoam ball, and I just used a regular 20 for that because you can take it and stick it into the styrofoam and let it dry. And then you don't have to worry about wrapping it because this doesn't have individually wired petals, and it's, there's nothing to wrap. So it needs to be on a stiffer wire so that it can hold itself up. Oh, and I pulled this one out. This is a little succulent petal. You can't even see the wire, see, against my hand. You can't even see it because it's so skinny. But that's the 30 also. So basically, the smaller the number, the wider the wire, and the thicker it is. And sometimes a wire that's a little thinner is still stiff, so you have to kind of bend it to see if it's going to work for you. But you want to use the thinner wires to put inside petals so it won't show through, and make sure that it's white if you're going to color it. And that's pretty much it. But just remember that the number is a fraction. So the higher the number, the thinner the wire is, and get the fabric covered ones. All right, so leave me any questions, but that's pretty much it. And I hope that was helpful.